This is More Than Money with Mapalo Maku, brought to you by Sasfin Wealth.
Welcome to More Than Money. I'm Mapalo Maku, a personal finance columnist, and I love having money conversations that change people's perspective about finances. Why am I doing this podcast, you might ask? To talk about money. Not the paper stuff. I mean the baggage, the feeling, the emotional, heart-wrenching stuff. We find this conversation so uncomfortable to have, which is why on this podcast, I have decided to have this very difficult conversations. We are going to have some difficult discussions because better money conversations lead to better money confidence, and healthy money dialogue leads to healthy money decisions. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to and having a conversation with Mark Berman. He is the Group CEO of Soundrock Property Group. Mark, thank you so much for joining me today.
It is my absolute honor and pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So property. Tell me about property. You know, I think especially in South Africa, it's still seen as one of the best and safest investments one can get into. How did you find yourself in this space?
Wow, I got a long story.
Yes.
For how I got into property and how I actually landed up in this industry. I mean, I've been in the industry 30 years.
3 decades. That's a long time.
I know, but I look good, and it's like, I'm not sponsored, so I can't tell you what face lotion I use to do this. But factually, I grew up. I was very lucky. I had a father who was an entrepreneur. And I had a grandfather who came out from Lithuania in 1918 on a ship with his brother and couldn't speak a word of English. So he arrived in this country with nothing and no way of doing anything with, I think it was total of 18 pounds.
Sure.
And what happened was he arrived in Cape Town, found his way up to Johannesburg, and got a job working at a delicatessen. And in those days, he had nowhere to live. So what him and his brother did is they lived in the back room. They had a back room in this place. So coming from nothing, and he worked his way up to the point where, being an entrepreneurial person that he was, he decided that he was going to get into the farming industry.
Yes.
And he built up, to me, I mean, as a kid, it was just like this little empire. And I mean, you got to love the guy. I mean, even every time I think of him, I just see this teddy bear of a man that just loved his family and loved his kids, but was so passionate about what he did. And life lessons learned from him were just incredible. He used to take me every single holiday. I used to go work with him on the farm. So he lived in Joburg, and the farm was out in a place called Putfontein, which is just the other side of Benoni.
Yes.
We'd be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and we would leave. My grandmother would pack us a breakfast thing, and we would eat on the road, and we would go to the farm when we get to the farm, and then we would have tea on the farm, which was with real fresh cow's milk. And then the day obviously would begin. So, and then we would leave there at about 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. So this man worked.
It's a full day. It's a full day's work.
Full day's work. And super disciplined. If you went into anything that he did, be it the workshop, where they were fixing tractors and all that kind of stuff, everything had its place. You would be able to eat off the floors.
Everything was impeccable.
Unbelievable. And his guys were disciplined. Disciplined. So they arrived on time for work. Everything had a system. The warehouses were packed a certain way up to a certain height so it was safe. You know, he would cows and beans and potatoes, and that was his deal. And I used to go all the way up until I turned 13, and he passed away at that particular time. A huge loss, obviously, but he had built up this mini empire, which I was mesmerized by. My uncle didn't see a future for me in the business and told me I must go study something else. So I never
got to continue.
Yes. And unfortunately, the farming industry and the drought and everything turned around, and that whole empire collapsed.
Sure.
Within 13 years of my grandfather
having passed
passing
away.
on. Yeah. So, but in the interim of all of that, my grandfather being the kind of person that he was, he helped my father purchase a clothing business. Small little clothing company called RMB Dress Company was here on Fox Street in Joburg CBD.
Yes.
And it was on the first floor of a building, and I think he had about 25 people working for him in those days. And so I started going to work for my dad. Dad was another person who was like, you're up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you're at work by 5, you have your tea and your breakfast at work, and then you carry on with your day, and you eat at your desk. We used to work up until 6, 7 o'clock at night, and we really worked hard. My dad was the same way. Everything had its place.
Yeah.
His factory was incredible. He built this business up to where he had 800 workers. That discipline and that method of working was instilled in me from a very, very young age. And everybody goes, oh, you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Well, okay, so the farm whole thing collapsed because of the droughts and everything else that went with it. Then in 1990, I had my own clothing company that I was running at the time. My dad allowed me to start a company, gave me a little bit of capital.
Yes.
And he said, okay, you've got a dream about what you want to do in the clothing industry. And I started up a little company called Frog International. My dad did women's clothing and I did unisex sportswear. Jeans, T-shirts. We were the first people to ever do jackets and tracksuit pants that were made out of a thing called neopore, which was parachute material for all intents and purposes.
Goodness.
And that was the beginning for the industry using that kind of stuff for sports jackets because it's breathable fabric and things like that. So they use it in ski suits. So it was never done anywhere else.
So you were the pioneers of
in,
that
in South Africa. Not in the world,
yes,
because it was done in Europe. So I took that example of what they were doing, brought it over here. It was spectacular. It was really great fun. But then in 1990, we had an issue with labor in this country. It was quite intense. And the unions went on strike. And if you understand the clothing industry, you know that you can only deliver in 2 windows during the year. So if you don't deliver for summer
I see.
by the end of July, August, the main guys, Studderfits, Edgars, all those kind of things just went, sorry for you, you haven't delivered. Orders cancelled. And it's actually a condition of their purchase.
Sure.
So, of course, that was communicated to the shop stewards and everybody else. And my dad said, listen, if you go on strike, understand there are 800 of you. We will have no choice but to close the business down because we had massive clients like Edgars and Studderfits and Garlics and all those guys. And he said, that's what it is. And I piggybacked on the back of his business for all intents and purposes. So we also had boutiques and some of the chains that we were supplying. And the guys didn't listen. They went on strike. And my dad said, okay, well, we can't deliver. We're going to have millions of rands worth of stock. And he just shut it down. 800 people lost their jobs.
Goodness.
And it wasn't like, I'm going to show you. It was like, we can't do this.
It's impossible.
And at that particular time, the South African clothing industry actually crashed. And that's where the big imports
Started
of Chinese
coming
clothing
in.
and everything else, that was substituted there. So now there I was, jobless, no money.
How old were you by this stage?
So I was about 22.
Okay.
And I had nothing. I had nowhere to go. I'd been brought up, trained by my family. So I was trained in the clothing industry. I did an apprenticeship in the clothing industry by going through every single department and working there until I could do the job. So this boy can use an overlocker. I can cut fabric. Okay, I can use sewing machines. I can use zip machines. So I could do all that kind of stuff. So where do I go to? The clothing industry was not a place I could move into because my dad, being who he was in the clothing industry, guys looked at and went, maybe he's trying to just get a leg up and then steal our secrets and go out.
Yes.
So it was, and it's no fault of theirs. You can honestly see that that's the game. But being the kind of person that I am and using my grandfather as an example, I went, I've got to be able to do something. Doesn't matter what it is. So I followed Grandpa's example, and believe it or not, I started working for Milky Lane. I became a manager for Milky Lane down in Cape Town in Sea Point.
And where did property come in?
So this is like I told you. It's
Yes.
an interesting story. So now I'm working for. I've gone from being my own managing director of my own company, and I landed up literally with zero. I moved to Cape Town. I had a beat up old car that was like falling apart, and I lived in a partially furnished apartment in Sea Point. And I started working for Milky Lane in Sea Point, and I was doing ice creams. I was earning, I think, 1,500 Rand a month, and barely surviving, but I made it happen.
Yes.
Anyway, one day, I go, okay, I'm here and I've got to start, but now I've got to move. I was reading the newspaper and there's an article for a real estate agency called Camden's. See the segue into property now?
Yes. Yes.
So they're looking for business brokers. And I worked with my grandfather. I worked with my dad.
Yes. In businesses.
So
I have some skills around that.
I have an understanding of balance sheets and funding and how banks work and what price earning ratios are and yields and all these clever things. I had an understanding, but I knew I wasn't the king of the castle. So I went for this job interview and I got the job, which was spectacular because you would have thought, oh, fantastic, Mark. You must have really sold yourself. Nope, it didn't cost them anything. I was getting 50% of the commission. And they got the other 50%. All they did was they provided me with a desk and business cards. Great business model. So I started on day one, and it was, quite a daunting thing. Now, I'd gone from kind of like being led into businesses and apprenticed and whatever. And here I'm starting in a new environment with nobody to teach me. There's your desk. There are your cards. Off you go. So what I do is I go, okay, I've got to make this work somehow. I've no network. I have nothing. So I walk out the front door of Camden's in Belleville, and I turn to the left, and I walk into the first shop, and I go, hi, my name's Mark Berman, and I'm a business broker with Camden's. Is your business for sale? What do you think the person said?
I don't know you. What do you want? Who is this guy?
Yeah, and actually, no, I'm not selling my business. So then I thank you very much. Here's my business card. Walk out to the next door. Hi, my name's Mark Berman. I work with Camden's. I'm a business broker. Is your business for sale? The answer once again is no. And to say that it wasn't a soul-destroying experience would be a lie. It was. But I did this for 3 weeks. Every single day, I just walked the whole of Belleville and Parow. Every single day, shop to shop, saying the same line, getting the same answer. They say insanity is doing the same thing every single day and expecting a different result. However, after about 150 to 180 places that I'd been to, I walked into the shop, and of course, you've got to be like happy and uptone about the whole thing. I walk into the shop, little fish and chip shop, blue walls, yellow striped dado, fish and chip. Walk in there, go, hi, my name's Mark Berman. I work for Camden's. I'm a business broker. Is your business for sale? And this amazing old man says to me, Mark, it's so nice to meet you. I've been thinking about selling my business. I want to retire. And I was like,
there's someone.
I'm going to buy a Lamborghini. Anyway, I signed the mandates and I realized very, very quickly that I had nobody to sell it to. So I had a business for sale.
But you didn't have someone to buy the business.
Yeah, isn't that interesting, eh? So
that's a big problem. Yes.
So what I did was, okay, now, what do I do? How do I sell this business? There's no internet. There's no multimedia, like social media, multimedia, blah, blah, blah. I'm a little oak with a business for sale. I went back to the first person that I saw on day one.
To say, okay, now I'm not asking you if you want to sell your business. Do you want to buy a business?
Spot on. Spot on. So I walked in and I said, do you remember me? Mark Berman, blah, blah. You want to buy a business? No. Okay, cool. And I went along to every single person. And I reminded them who I was and gave them another card or whatever it was. And I kept going. And eventually, after about 90, 100 people or whatever it was, 100 shops that I'd been to, the one guy turns around and says, you know what? I actually am interested. This is a guy who owned a cafe. And he said, I'm interested in buying something. Let's have a look. And I did the deal.
So
But
that
I
was your
walked.
first deal.
Yeah.
And how long did it take you from when you were given your desk and business cards?
Must have taken me between 6 and 8 weeks.
And in this time, are you earning an income or
Nothing.
Nothing.
It's commission only.
Jeez.
So I was...
So you haven't sold anything, you haven't, so you are not earning any money as
Nothing.
a 22-year-old.
As a 22-year-old party animal, because you are at 22. I was a Joburg boy, went down to Cape Town, so my infrastructure and people around was very small. My parents had lost everything. They had nothing. They couldn't support me in any way. So it was like I was hustling to get stuff done. You know what I mean? And the money came in from this deal. And let me tell you something now. It was unbelievable. I mean, I must have made like 3,000 Rand commission or whatever, or 4,000 Rand. But the incredible thing about that was that all of a sudden, the most interesting and unbelievable thing happened.
Which was?
People started phoning me.
Ah.
They had my card.
You know, Mark, now you are touching on a subject that I'm very passionate about, right? Because what I see oftentimes as young people starting out their businesses, they get so many no's that it's disheartening. But I always say, even if you get a no, but now someone knows about you, right? Because that's an introduction.
If you don't knock on the door, there's nobody that's going to open for you.
Yes.
If you're sitting in your bedroom and you're wondering how you're going to get started, there is only one way, and that's to get off your butt and walk the streets. I mean, it sounds ridiculous. Like we live in a cyber age where people are expecting just to put stuff on the internet, become a YouTube phenomenon or an Instagram phenomenon or whatever it is, because I got 8,000 likes and I've got 30,000 followers. And
that even doesn't necessarily translate into money. You can have as many followers as you want, but it doesn't always translate into the ka-ching-ching.
It's 100% true. And also, it's like winning the lotto. How many people are doing that and how many people are really successful?
And I mean, they show that about 98% of the people who win the lotto, 2 years later, it's completely gone.
Yeah, for a simple reason. They never actually earned the money. So they didn't take it as their own money and invest it and work with it and hide it away from themselves. What they do is they go, this is a windfall, spend it all
Yes.
because I can do it again.
Yeah.
You can't do it again when it comes to the lotto. There's like one person that I've ever heard of that's won the lotto more than once. But the truth of the matter is you've got to be able to create a workable pattern that creates income for yourself that no matter what happens, you can always fall back on. Some people say you've got to have a degree. I don't really subscribe to that. I subscribe to the fact that you need to work, found a niche, and because that's what I did with what I was doing, because walking around and meeting people and getting my name out there and the hard work that went into that and the, talk about doing 10,000 steps a day. It was much more than 10,000 steps a day. But the important thing about it was I set up a network that I never knew I was doing. It was a by chance thing. And what happened was people started phoning me.
Yes.
And they started telling me what they wanted to do, or they had a cousin that had something, or a brother or an aunt or whatever it was. And all of a sudden I started having a network. And I was the only person doing that in the whole company. So I would arrive, because we didn't have cell phones in those days, like it was the early 90s, 1991. Yes. I would arrive at my desk and there were like 15, 20 messages for me. And everybody's looking at me, oh, you're so lucky. I go, yeah.
Yeah.
See the seventh pair
2
of
months
shoes.
later that I've been walking the streets of Belleville.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Belleville, Para. I knew every single shop owner. I knew everybody. And it was because that's how I progressed to the next level. Because I walked into a shopping center, ShopRite Park in Parow. And I walked in there and the manager comes up to me. It's a guy by the name of Jaime Levine. He walks up to me and he goes, who are you? I see you in my shopping center all the time. What are you doing here? And I said to him, well, my name's Mark Berman. I'm a business broker. I work for Camden's. And I've sold 3 businesses in your shopping center. And he said, really? I said, which ones? And I told him which ones. And he said, how would you like to work for Brol? And I went, who? Now, we're talking early 90s. So Brol Property Group, which you guys all know because the building that we're currently in is managed by them. Fantastic company. And it's not a plug on them, but they gave me, listen to the story. I mean, it's just incredible. So Jaime says, how'd you like to work for them? I go, don't know who they are. So being the hairy casual person that I am, I say, yeah, okay, let's see. Why don't you give me a retainer and this, that, and everything else, He goes, I'm going to set up a meeting for you to meet the CEO, Jonathan Broll.
Sure.
So I go, fine. I've got no www.whotheheckiesbroll.com.
Yes.
There's no Google. So anyway, I arrive for this interview on a Tuesday. So I stand in front of this building in Bree Street. I look at this thing and I'm going, oh my word, I have to work for these people. This is a proper company.
Yes.
This is not a house in Belleville that's been converted into a real estate agency. This is proper.
Proper stuff.
And I look and I'm wearing, like I'm dressed today, pretty much. Like tackies, jeans, and a jersey that mommy had knitted me with an earring in my ear and a ponytail.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to see the CEO of Broll. Can you imagine? I walk into the foyer of the building, and I think they were on the 6th floor. And it's glass lift. And it clears the 2nd floor, which is the height of the monument-style building. And all of a sudden, I get this vista. Now, just picture this. I'm going up in a lift. I've got Signal Hill, Lion's Head, Table Mountain, Devil's Peak, and the whole City Bowl on my left-hand side. And I'm like, oh, my word, how the hell am I going to get this job here? And I'm really conscious about how I'm dressed now. Like super conscious. Anyway, I get to the 6th floor and the lift opens and I turn right and I look over the reception desk, over the boardroom table, through the window, and in those days from this building, you could see the harbour. Now, it took my breath away.
Yes.
I was like, I got to be here. So I walk up to the receptionist. Believe it or not, I still know her name. Her name is Kathy. I mean, it's fascinating that I still remember her name. Anyway, I walk up to her and I say, hi. She goes, hi. I go, my name is Mark Berman. She says, how can I help you? I said, I'm here to see Jonathan Broll. Well, to say that it wasn't like watching a deer in the headlights at that particular moment. She looked at me like, what? Here's this guy. You coming dressed like that to come and see Jonathan. Anyway, she told me to sit down. Everything's corporate, obviously. Jonathan comes out of his office. Now, Jonathan is impeccable. Jonathan Broll is like impeccably dressed. He walks out. He's wearing charcoal grey pants, a white shirt, and a red tie. Impeccably dressed. Cufflinks, proper. And he walks up to me, but you can see the hesitation about like, who's this guy and why is he
dressed this way?
Imagine here I am with an earring in my ear. Never mind the ponytail. So he calls me into his office, and 20 minutes later, like, I have to have this job, I've got to work for Broll. And he says to me after 20 minutes, he says, listen, Mark, I've got to tell you that property management is not going to fit you.
Ooh.
Ouch. Lots of other, yes, all those things.
Yes.
And I was like, when you're huffing bubbles and you're sitting there and you're trying to like finding a way, there's got to be a way. Like, I'm Jonathan, but
convince him that actually
I can wash the floors. I can just don't let me go. So he says to me,
and this is after you were having a conversation with him.
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
So he says to me, but I'll tell you what. He says, my partner Alan Wallace is here. He runs the whole broking division. Let him come have a chat to you. So I go, okay.
At least I still have one foot in the door.
Alan comes across. So Jonathan's office, you can imagine, is on the one side of this boardroom. Alan's is on the other, and they both overlook the harbour. So it's like, it's to die for stuff. Alan comes out, walks through the boardroom, comes and grabs me, and, obviously introduces himself, whatever. We go back to his office. I walk through the boardroom, tongue out, like drooling. It's like, I think I was quite embarrassing, actually, if I think about it now. Anyway, so he takes me into his office, and we have an hour and a half conversation, which is a better indicator, And afterwards he says to me, listen, Mark, it's Tuesday. He says, Jonathan and myself are going away for the weekend. I'm going to have a chat to him. I'm not promising you anything. I have an idea. I'm not saying that it's going to work or it's not going to work. So please just relax. I'll call you on Monday morning. So thank you very much. And off we go.
Yes.
And I walked out of those offices and I went, how do I make how do I make this happen? I can't just walk out of here and then wait, because waiting,
It's going to kill you, basically.
can you imagine?
Yeah.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday,
And that's if he calls you on Monday.
if he calls. So I went back home and I was going, okay, cool. I've got to do something about this. So I woke up Wednesday morning, and at 8:30 in the morning, I pick up the phone and I phone Brol. And Kathy answers the phone and she goes, hi, Brol Property Group. How can I help you? And I go, it's Mark Berman. Please, can I speak to Alan Wallace? She goes, sure, no problem. Puts me through. He goes, hi, Alan Wallace. I go, hi, Alan, it's Mark Berman. How are you doing? He goes, oh, Mark, I'm great and you. How can I help you? I go, I just want to know if I got the job.
I said, I'll give you a call on Monday.
That's pretty much how he answered. And I said, oh, okay, cool. You have a great week and a great weekend. I look forward to hearing from you on Monday. And I went about my daily work. And at 4:00 in the afternoon, I picked up the phone and I phoned Alan Wallace.
Oh, goodness. You were a pain.
And Kathy answered the phone. And I said, hi, Kathy, it's Mark Berman. Please, can I speak to Alan Wallace? She said, sure, no problem. And put me through. And Alan answered the phone, hi, Alan Wallace. And I went, hi, Alan Wallace. This is Mark Berman. And he giggled. And he said, yes, Mark, what can I do for you? And I said to him, Alan, I just want to know if I got the job. And he thought it was hilarious. And he said to me, you know, Mark, you're very persistent, but I must just tell you that I told you. I'm going away for the weekend. I promise you I'll phone you on Monday. I said, okay, cool.
Please don't tell me you've proceeded to phone him for the next couple of days.
Thursday morning,
Oh, no.
8:30. I picked up the phone. I phoned. Kathy answered the phone. I introduced myself. Alan picked up the phone. Hello, Alan Wallace.
Oh, my goodness. He was a patient man because, I mean, I would have proceeded not to answer any calls anymore.
So here's the thing. So he answered the phone. I said, hi, it's Mark Berman. So he thinks this is hilarious. He goes, this is so funny, Mark. How can I help you? I said to him, Alan, I just want to know if I've got the job.
Oh, my word.
He said, you know what, Mark? I'll tell you what. Why don't you start on Monday morning?
And that's the story of persistence, isn't it?
You see, it's about understanding what do you want, number one. You've got to decide what your goal is, and you've got to go for it, and you've got to do what it takes. That doesn't mean you upset the person, but what is the one thing about being involved in sales that you need? You need persistence.
Yeah.
You need to
pick
know-
up the call.
You need to pick up the call, and you need to make the call.
Yes.
If you're not going to do that, you're not going to get anywhere, because if you're waiting for the phone to ring, if you're waiting for somebody to phone you back, you can wait forever. Nobody's waiting for you. Trust me. So that's the principle of how I got started. And this is the thing I try and instill in other people, is that you've got to get off your butt. You've got to do the legwork. And you've got to be persistent. You cannot give up on your goal. You've got to dream the dream, and you've got to make the dream a reality. So
Yeah.
I started off as a retail broker with Brol, not knowing the difference between a square meter of floor space and a liter of water. I mean, really.
It was the same measurements to you.
It was like, what the heck? You know what I'm saying?
You are listening to More Than Money, a podcast collaboration brought to you by Sasfin Wealth. At Sasfin Wealth, we empower our clients to reach their global investment goals, to retire with dignity, and to leave a lasting legacy. If you would like to have real money conversations, visit sasfin.com/wealth and talk to us. Enjoy the rest of the podcast.
But now I want to go into your first big paycheck.
My first big paycheck.
Yes. You know, as you were building a company and, you know, you can see and can feel that and sense that, you know, things are starting to go well. What did you do with your first big paycheck?
We did a deal and we made a rather large sum of money.
Yes.
I sold 2 shopping centers to a fund.
Shopping centers.
Shopping
Not a shop.
centers. Not a shop.
Shopping centers.
Shopping centers.
That is incredible.
That was the first big, like, real, when that money goes into your account,
Yes.
you
And
notice
it makes
the
a
zeros.
significant difference.
You look at that and you can actually get overwhelmed because it's so many zeros. It's almost like winning the lotto. The difference with this and winning the lotto is there's always another building that you can sell, but you've got to be frugal. My viewpoint was, how do I protect myself from my money? Because you will always
Almost
spend...
like, how do I protect myself from myself?
Well, in a way you are, because if you've got something... So here's the thing. Do you have a credit card?
I do not have a credit card.
You're very clever. Let's say you get a 5,000 Rand credit card. They go, I have 5,000 Rand. They don't have 5,000 Rand. The bank has 5,000 Rand.
5,000 Rand.
They're going to give it to you to use, and you will spend 5,000 Rand.
And you will pay interest on top of that.
At 22%. That's how people work. It is just the way that it is. That's why people who win the lotto spend all their money and they disappear into the universe without having accomplished anything. And I knew that if I did not secure myself properly, it makes no difference how much money I made, I would spend it all. So what I did was I went and I bought property. And I invested in properties. And that's where I actually started my own development company, because there we were only broking before. And now I went out and I bought a couple of pieces of property in the Randburg area. And we were looking at doing residential developments and things like that. So that's how I protect myself. So you were quite
smart with your first big paycheck,
if
we can call it that. That is fantastic. What do you like using your money for? What do you spend your money on?
Other people. And that's not even being funny. I mean, the thing is, I have a motto in my life, which is people have got to be better off for having met me. And that doesn't mean I buy them or I do things like that. But what I do is I invest in people. And I invest in people in time and opportunity. I create opportunity. So me reinvesting in my business or creating further business then empowers other people, and I give other people opportunities by creating employment and all that kind of thing. A lot of guys in this property game are going, me, 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 me. It's all about me. It's all about me. But we are the catalyst for economy. And the question is, oh, really? You're the catalyst for economy? You sound like sitting up there on your chair. And I'm going, you have a look at it. Let's take a shopping center by way of an example. You build a shopping center and you go, okay, so there's the bricks and mortar and there's the shopping center. That's what you've done. Spectacular. But let's go back right to the beginning. So somebody had to sell me the piece of ground. So he earned a commission. Yeah. Somebody had to sell me the piece of ground. So they had to make money. They went and they spent that money. They bought things, houses, cars, whatever. So there's the economy started. But now I go and employ town planners, architects, etc., etc.
Yes.
Then I start leasing the place. You see how all of a sudden money is now starting to move. We're creating economy. Then we hire the construction company, employ a whole bunch of people. Okay, they go and they dig a hole and they put concrete in it. And all of a sudden, where did that concrete come from? Where did the machine come from that you actually using to dig the hole, the pick, the shovel? Somebody had to manufacture all that kind of stuff. The mine had to make the iron.
There's a whole economy, to your point.
And then you fill it with tenants who sell stuff. And where do they get their stuff from? All the way from the farmer who's breeding the cow, who's buying the fertilizer to fertilize his millies. And so it goes on. So there's a massive picture. And the influence that you have in an area is incredible. So when you look at that, and I look at it like that, the legacy that I leave behind is economies that are generating power, and you're employing people, and people are spending money, and that's what keeps the world going. Yeah. It's a hell of a responsibility.
Absolutely. You spoke about legacy, and I know you have a daughter. What is the legacy you want to leave for her?
The legacy that I want to leave with her, and it's funny because we were having a conversation about it today, is that it's not about money, it's not about assets, it's about being effective, being resilient to economies, being a person that never gives up, being a person who's persistent and also stable. So you're not fickle, you follow a path, and that you can achieve your goals by following that path. So you keep your eye on the mountain and you focus your energy in whatever you're doing, and you bring the people in around you that'll help you achieve your goal. And if people who are toxic or narcissists and things like that, you get rid of them really quickly, because those are the people that'll stop you from achieving whatever you want to achieve.
Absolutely.
So, I've always had this viewpoint that money is transient, because you can be worth 100 million rand today. And in 2008, you saw what happened with the global crash, and people lost everything, every single thing. They were millionaires, billionaires, and they were jumping out of buildings. We had the global stock market crash around 94, I think it was. And then, we've had COVID now. So it is transient. You've got to be resilient. My legacy for my daughter and for everybody else is you've got to have the ability to pick yourself up out of the worst nightmare, dust yourself off, and keep walking.
And we all need that. I mean, the economy is so tough right now. What has been your worst setback?
As you asked me that question, the goosebumps all over my body. So in the property market, they happen all the time. So it's not like, anybody who's been involved in property has either nearly lost everything or lost everything and started again. I mean, I don't know anybody that's just cruised through their whole lives in property. But for me, the single biggest or the most memorable setback for me was the financial crash in 2008, because the dream became a nightmare overnight. One news broadcast was the end of everything in this country. I mean, once the global meltdown started and it was being reported, the thought pattern was that we're down south here in Africa and we're not going to get touched by this. Very soon that changed, because the banks follow international trends. It's not like, we mutually exclusive. We have banks and institutions that invest internationally. So you are subject to markets all over the world. And we were honestly hit with a double whammy, because we came back in December of that year to Eskom's load shedding, something that we'd never experienced. So in the property game, we got hammered at us first off, but we thought we'd be able to avert that issue. But then the financial crash happened, and it was at the same time. So you got a double whammy, and the banks called in any unsecured facility. And if you had a development opportunity, which we had 3 that we were busy with, where we were busy with short-term loans in order to get the thing going and then replace it with long-term funding from the development side of things, the banks called all those loans in.
Sure. So meaning that you couldn't do what you wanted to do.
And you had nowhere to go. It was not like you could go from Bank A to Bank B, because they would be funding you. Because Bank B was doing exactly the same.
No one was funding anyone.
They pulled the plug. And it was an emotional thing, because I don't believe they had to be as tough as they were. And I think there was definitely room for leniency, because I pretty much lost everything at that particular point. How I actually managed to survive that is incredible. I mean, I lost my properties. I managed to save like 2 out of my portfolio. A couple of houses I managed to keep. But I went from being financially cruising to, how am I going to pay the bond on my house?
Goodness. And how was that on your relationship? Because I can imagine you had a child and you, like you were saying, you were financially cruising, and now you're hit with this massive, massive setback. What were the conversations like, and how did you navigate that?
In any relationship, when you start talking money, it makes life difficult, because the basis of stability is the fact that you can actually put food on the table. And that the house is paid and the car is paid. And it makes no difference if it's the woman who's the breadwinner or the man, or you both are. But I tell you what made it a little bit more difficult in my case is that my wife was my partner in business.
Ooh.
And the conversations were strained. But we never attacked each other for the condition that we were finding ourselves in, because we never caused it. This was totally an outside influence. So instead of tearing each other's heads off, we buckled down. And although we were very careful on how we spoke to each other. We really were, because it was so easy somebody does something wrong and then you rip the person's head off for no reason.
Yes.
And that's not going to help anybody. And my poor daughter would be put in the middle of that, and that would have just been an absolute nightmare. So what we did is we buckled down and we started to walk the streets, like I did right at the beginning. And we started phoning
Going
people.
back to the same principles.
Same principles. And from being a guy who was now doing his own developments and had his own development company and this and that and all these clever little things, I was now, hello, my name is Mark Berman. I've got this company called Soundrock. We do leasing. Do you need anything done?
How was that for your ego? Because I can imagine you had built a company that was thriving and, like you were saying, you're financially cruising. Now you are at a point where you are the very same guy who started walking the streets, making the call. How was that for the ego?
I was very lucky that I'd done it before. I'd been through it before. So I didn't like go, oh, woe is me, whatever.
Yes. What are people going to say now
Yeah.
that...
You know, and I never wore my money on my sleeve. So and I think that made a huge difference. So I never lived in this lavish place. I lived in Kensington in a modest house. I drove a 1.9 turbo Audi that could do 1,000 kilometers on a tank because it saved me petrol. And that's the way that I lived. And that's the way I still live. So I didn't have the sports cars and all the mansions. So there was no embarrassment of losing all this stuff. The hurt was the fact that I'd worked so hard and I'd lost all my assets and I have to start again. Because I knew I'd done it before and I knew how to do it, I just did it. I just got up in the morning and I went and I knocked on doors and I made the phone calls. And when the bank was phoning me and telling me that I've got 48 hours to pay my bond, otherwise they're going to summons me, I would work a way of how to communicate with them. And I managed to keep it going for 6 months until I started making money and started paying everybody off, until I was actually got rid of all the blacklists. Thank God I didn't have any judgments against me because I managed to manage everybody. But that goes about communication.
Yes.
When you hit rock bottom, don't hide away. It's get out there.
Such an important lesson.
Yeah.
Do not bury your head in the sand and hope that it's going to go away. You're going to make the problem just much bigger.
Yeah, it'll exacerbate it to the point where nobody will listen to you when you do start talking, because all of a sudden, oh, now you have the problem. The banks want to know that you're going to pay them back. They don't want to kill you. Yeah. They know you're going through a hard time, but talk to them.
And they can see it because there's been history of you paying consistently over the years. What is the best money decision you've made so far?
Invest in myself. So I don't stop learning. I'm always doing a course. I'm always studying something. I'm always buying a book, reading a book, learning a new thing, because I know that I don't know everything. And the more you know, the more understanding you have, the more you can control. And the more control you have, the more money you can make. So by investing in myself and empowering myself, that means that I have knowledge, I can expand, I can influence more. And the more I know, the more I can empower other people. Because there are those people out there that have studied their whole lives, made billions of rand, and sit on their thrones, and they don't help the other people. They forget where they came from and how they got to where they got to. And they don't share their stories. It's important to be a person who cares about other people to the degree that you're willing to share everything, the good and the bad and the ugly and everything, because life is not a Hollywood movie. Life is real. It's a game, and you need to know the rules, obviously, but you need to play the game. And sometimes the decisions that you make are really hard, and you make wrong decisions. You're not going to make decisions that are right all the time. And by not sharing those experiences with other people and going, oh, well, you'll learn your own lessons in life, disenfranchises the person and unempowers them, because you're putting yourself on a pedestal and you're not making yourself real. You know, I developed this property development course that I've done now together with a group called SAPIN, the South African Property Investors Network, for a simple reason, is that I've got 30 years worth of property knowledge. Somebody starting out in the game, where are they going to go? They're going to go do a 14-day course, and they're not going to understand what's going on, and they're not going to hear from somebody who's been battered by this industry and is giving them advice based on the things that have actually
on lived experience.
Yeah. So I did this course for the guys. It's about 18 modules, and I interview 18 different people, from quantity surveyors to main contractors, funders, town planners, architects, the trip. And we talk real life experience, what to look for, what to do, and share stories about what happens if you don't do it. And that for me is super, super, super important. So I empower myself so I can empower others.
I love that.
And that's the deal.
Yeah. Just as a last question, Mark, do you still have some fears about money?
You know, I don't have a fear about money. I have a fear about not being able to produce, because money, and I think this is where people get it incredibly wrong. Money's a statistic. Money is not a thing. You want to make money? Go buy a printer and print money. Money's a byproduct of your own production. If you don't produce something that somebody wants, and I say this all the time to people, when you meet somebody, find out what they need and deliver the service of what they need, not what you think they need. Make yourself valuable. If you're valuable and you produce a service, people will pay you for that service. But if you're delivering something that you think people want, and then you get upset that people aren't buying it,
this thing.
then who's the person that's wasting their time? So for me, it's the fear of not being able to produce a product that anybody wants. And that's why I guess I'm so hungry for information, and I'm so into surveying and checking out what the market's doing, and meeting with people and finding things out, because you never want to be in a position where you can't produce a product that somebody else is prepared to pay for. If you can produce a product that somebody else is prepared to pay for, and you ask any entrepreneur, they produce things that other people want. And that's how they get started. Even if it's a guy in the township that does a little wire car, somebody wants that. He knows that if he stands on that corner at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And my son is in the
car, they're going to take a look at that and say, I want that.
Exactly. So there's a market. So they produce something that somebody wants, and at the price that the person's prepared to pay for it. So it's all surveyed, whether they know that they've done it or not. So so it's not a money thing. I'm not scared of having no money. I'm scared of
You've
not
been there
being
before and built yourself up again.
Yeah. You lose it, you make it again, you lose it, you make it again. It's not, people cannot judge you by what you've got in your bank balance. People have got to judge you by your participation, what you do, and how you help other people. If you're valuable, people are going to appreciate you. You can be a trillionaire and nobody cares whether you're alive or dead. What would you rather be?
What is the best advice that you have ever been given? And what advice would you like to pass on to someone who wants to get into the property business?
Okay, best advice ever given. I was in Australia and I had a meeting with a gentleman by the name of Andrew Banks. This guy is very, very, very wealthy property developer. He's got one of the biggest personnel agencies in Australia, and he's also very involved in the arts, and his whole family. He's an amazing guy. And he taught me a lesson in life that I will never, ever forget, and one that I impart to people all the time. Don't make your friends your business partners. Make your business partners your friends. And that has lived with me, and I get goosebumps thinking about it, because how many times have best friends gone into business
ended up being enemies?
But if you meet somebody and you get on and you get into business together, they become your best friend. The other way around does not work.
That is incredible advice.
And I live by that advice to this day. My business is about helping people, not harming people. And sometimes when you have to make a tough decision on something, you don't want to be prejudiced by the friendship.
Yes.
But I'm your friend. Why did you do that to me? That all of a sudden, your impartiality goes out the window. You've got to do business for business. There's no emotion.
Yes.
The numbers have got to talk.
With that, we're going to end it right there. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for sharing your story and really opening yourself up to say, you know what, I have failed, but I have come back up, and sharing your story. Thank you so much.
It's my absolute pleasure. I'm so glad I was able to do this.
This was a Sasfin Wealth podcast. Visit sasfin.com/wealth for more information.